Good question. I think that in itself can kind of go forever, because we're always trying to identify, who we are. Was this the right choice? I think that's, that's always a part of, not just professionally, personally. But who am I? I am. I think one of the things you asked me about is who do I most, or my mentor and things like that. And one of my responses to that is, I just feel I'm a melting pot of so many people in my life, in my spiritual life too. I am not out to be just one person. I kind of want to be the best that I can be, and the best of the people who've influenced me. And still learning from mistakes and such. I'm very proud of my heritage. I'm Polish, 100% Polish. I grew up in a very, I call rich family, not by wealth. I mean, completely not by wealth, but rich in heritage and family. I grew up in a very poor family. My dad was 25 years in the Army, never graduated from high school. My mom did graduate from high school, but got an associate's degree and did different things. And in the larger part of the family, my brother and I were the first to graduate with a college degree, let alone me with a doctoral degree, and my brother has like 3 or 4 master's degrees. He just doesn't want to write the dissertation. But we're very proud of our heritage. We grew up 4 and 5 years. He was 8 years older than I was, but by the time I was 3 and 4, I was playing accordion, which was the family instrument, identified with polkas and waltzes and things like that. My brother played piano and organ, but I can remember being 4 or 5 years old, playing music for my grandparents on their anniversary or on their birthday when they came over to the family. Polish food was a major thing. I always tell my own son and friends that in my entire lifetime as a child, I went on one family vacation, and I still can't figure out how my parents pulled that off. And I have a feeling because we went to my father's sister's place in Orlando, so we had a place to stay, and I have a feeling back in the day they probably got some tickets for us too. But family vacations, we couldn't afford them as far as that goes, and we went fishing. Fishing was a huge family thread for us. We used to go up to Canada. I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York, and we used to go up to Canada and catch so much fish during the summer it would last us through the entire winter. And that was a tradition, which I thought was pretty neat. We weren't going to the market to get the fish. It's something that we did together, and it was a conversation piece. As we went through and had holidays with the family at Easter and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the Polish traditions, and having fish on New Year's, having fish on Christmas Eve. I can still smell the baking happening on Sunday mornings, waking up in the morning and hearing the Polish radio going in the back. And even though my dad never graduated from high school, he could speak like 4 or 5 languages, so who am I? That's who I am, because that's actually a good question. I'm still trying to figure that out as as I know my hourglass is on the other half of my life. So that's who I am. I'm sorry for the vague answer.
So what is your role here on campus?
I am the director of bands. My role is to kind of rebuild an instrumental music program here on campus. Historically, there was a fledgling band program here on campus. Actually, it used to be one of the most regarded in Eastern Kentucky. And almost the short story of about 25 years or less, 20 years, the university dissolved it. There was a very well-known band director here, Jim Andy Caudle, who I I think I probably know more about him than he knows more about himself. Just by, I've interviewed so many people, I've read so much, I've reached out to alumni, and the only person I haven't met is the man himself. And he actually lives in Ashland, and I've yet to have a chance to meet him. But I know I'm within one person of him, because we now know of each other. So I'm definitely on a mission to meet that legend who, at one time, the band program, the music program, was the largest program on campus. And what we see as the administration building today, that entire building was music, opposed to what we see today, maybe a floor and a half, if that, is music, where they had the whole building plus booth and wherever it was. So yeah, it was pretty incredible to look back historically. So I don't know if I can ever match that magnitude, but my job as the director of bands is to rebuild an instrumental program and bring some things to campus in an instrumental way, whether it's wind band, jazz, chamber, marching band, and allow that to build into the new evolving culture of the University of Pikeville.
So, as a kid, hearing the polka music, playing the accordion, as a kid, was the dream, I want to be a director of bands? Or what was the dream as a kid? What did you want to do as a kid?
I wanted to be a zoologist. Music was just a passion. I don't think I even had a choice. I started playing accordion when I was 3 with lessons. I had lessons every week from a Polish gentleman in the neighborhood. I did not learn about Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, and I don't think I actually even realized who they were until later in high school, if not college. I grew up on polkas, waltzes, popular music of the 70s, and Chicago, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Huey Lewis and the News. By the time I was later in high school, that was truly my musical passion. But really up until 9th grade, 100%, I didn't even have music on the radar. I wanted to be a zoologist. Everything in my life was revolved about studying animals, studying the world of animals. Even in 6th and 7th grade, I would write 70-page book reports or science reports about animals. I mean, that's how I was a geek. And my downfall, if you want to say it, was in 9th grade, the end of my 9th grade year. I took biology, and the teacher I had at the end was allowing people to go into advanced biology. And I was a good A-B student, but biology definitely wasn't my strong A. I was probably like B+. And he asked me the same thing, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go into zoology. That's been my life goal. And he goes, you'll never make it. And I was crushed. I was simply crushed. And even as much as I told him everything, I was passionate about what I did. I took care of rabbits. I was on the horse riding club. I mean, you name it. I was involved as much as I could. But he's like, you know, I've seen what your studies are like. I've seen, you know, your biology and stuff. He goes, I think you got to find something else. And he wouldn't advance me to the next biology class. So I was crushed at the end of 9th grade. And at that point, my brother had already finished college. And to this day, he is an idol of mine. He is, means the world to me. And we live really in two different worlds career-wise. And I remember talking to him on the phone, and I told him, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do anymore. And he goes, one, don't worry about it, which I think is a huge thing for so many kids. Like, they have to know what they want to be when they're in 8th grade or 5th grade or even 11th grade. And I found out you didn't have to. But the one conversation he had with me changed it all. He goes, I want you to imagine the day that you have to wake up and mom and dad are just incredibly mad at you for whatever reason. All your friends don't want a thing to do with you. Everything is completely wrong in this day. He goes, what would you do? What do you back into that makes you happy? He goes, don't think about money, but think about the worst possible day. Someone dying, someone breaking up with you. What would you do? And mine was always music. I mean, by that point, if at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was one of two places: sleeping or actually writing music and playing music. Even recently, my dad passed away in the mid-90s. And when my brother was going to college, he wrote letters on a typewriter to my brother. And recently I found a handful of those letters. And I read through them. And in those letters, there are always comments of, there goes Mike practicing again, or, man, he plays that piano so loud, or, yeah, I had to get a loaner trumpet because his trumpet had to go in the shop. I really hope it doesn't cost a lot, but man, this kid never stops practicing. So that was a perception of my dad. I don't know about my music teacher, but zoologist is what I really wanted to be up until that point. And then I didn't want to teach. So I did decide to go into music, and I started to follow my passion of composing and creating. I love creating. I love putting a project together. And so I decided, which I think a lot of high school students want to do when they want to go into music, is be the next big producer, be the next rock and roll star. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the producer. I love being behind the scenes. Many of my students here will remember when I say, I'm not about the concert. If we didn't have to do a single concert, it'd be fine. I love the rehearsal, because in a concert to me is, the audience gets cheated. They get to hear it once. I heard it from the worst to the best, and that's amazing to me. So anyways, I was gonna go into production. I got scholarships to go to Berkeley and Boston, and my music teacher just kind of tapped me and he goes, follow your passion without a doubt. And he says, I feel you have this knack. Try education too. Just try education. So what we ended up doing is finding a couple colleges that were strong in both music, music business, and music education. And I took his advice and I did that. And it really wasn't until my junior year in college. I was headstrong in music business, still in the education. I was getting scholarships from the National Association of Music Merchants. By my second year of college, I was assisting a professor in the music technology area. I was just the music business guy on campus. I ran the radio station. I was editor of the yearbook in college. I think by my junior year, I was finishing my second internship. I only needed one, but I did two, one in instrument repair and one in professional broadcasting. But my junior year, my senior year, I student teach. And I student taught, and it's just like, wow, this is amazing. This feels really good. And I'm like, I want to do this. And I think one of the other things that happened was my roommate in college, his dad was a truck driver, loved being a truck driver. But one of his passions growing up was to be a sound engineer, which is kind of the production thing. And I remember going on a spring break once with him, and he's like, yep, that's what I wanted to do too. And I realized no matter how good you were, it wasn't about being the most talented, it wasn't about being the most amazing, it was about being at the right place at the wrong time. And he goes, my calling, my path just never went there. And all that equipment through 25 years of his life was sitting in a storage garage. And he found out that you don't even need a degree to do that. These guys who are, wildly successful, even the famously successful, never had a degree to do that. And he decided to make a living. And that's something that happens. But I fell in love with teaching when I student taught. And I got that bug, and I really never looked back. And I say never really looked back because I taught for about 7 years, and then I got a tap from the music industry to work in the industry with manufacturing and retail and repair and that whole 9 yards, which was amazing. And I did that for 8 years, and then I really missed teaching. And I just kind of came to a crossroads, and I had to make a decision whether to stay with the company and move to another spot, or do what I was doing behind the scenes. I was working with marching bands and stuff like that. I said, no, I really feel this is where my calling is. And I decided to go back into teaching. And about 5 years, 6 years after that, I ended up getting my doctorate degree. So just climbed that ladder, and I love it. I love working with students. I love working with their passions. One of my favorite students to work with is one that really, honestly, doesn't want to be a music major, but wants to make music some type of interactive part of their life. Whether they want to do like music law, or whether they want to be an inventor or entrepreneur and use music to get into it, or just to be creative. And I think there's working in the industry and working in education, and a lot of my friends have done that. They just had this passion for music and followed their real dream. And then it's funny, because now we're all in our late 40s and 50s, and it's amazing to see that crew, that music crew I grew up with, how many of them are actually doing something in the music industry or education, even though they got an art degree or went into the Army or went to be an engineer and all that. So there you go. I think I answered the question somewhere in there.
You did.
Okay.
So obviously not a zoologist.
Yep.
Passionate about education and music, putting them together, but a dream job. What would just be a dream job for you?
I got a problem with that question.
Okay.
Because when it becomes a job, that's probably usually when I have to move on. When I enjoy what I do, it's not a job. It's what I enjoy doing. I'm blessed with the opportunity to get paid for it, thankfully. But I think I fell out of that dream job because I had a couple opportunities to be close to what I thought was the dream job, and when I was in those positions, I realized that what I thought was close was not necessarily my dream people. And I think that's really important. And I learned that from my jazz professor at my doctorate, is that he was saying, it's not just the job, it's who you're gonna hang out with. And if you can combine loving to hang out at this place that happens to pay you, that's your dream job. And maybe it's going to be music, because that's where your degree is. But what if one day I just happen to fall into this spot baking cookies? I don't know, or building a house, and just loving hanging out and doing that. My dream job is getting up in the morning and not realizing I have to go to work, and then realizing it's 9 o'clock at night and I forgot to go home. That's my dream job. And if that's going to be being a director of bands, if that's going to be teaching in a classroom, if that's going to be making cookies, if that's going to be building a house, if that's going to be cleaning facilities, if that's going to be installing pools, I think that's my dream job. Because one thing I do realize, I don't think I ever want to retire. I really, in my heart, for some reason right now, I don't ever, and I know a lot of my friends my age are like, 5 more years, 8 more years. I have some who are actually done. I don't see retirement in my path. I just feel I'm going to be in my dream job, waking up, going home, loving what I do.
So many different experiences help us position ourselves to where we're at now. What is one thing that spurred you on to the life path that you're on now?
These are all real hard questions. Could you say it one more time?
So we have, different experiences, different events. Maybe it's that, conversation with someone in the industry that says, oh, I really want to go back to teaching or whatever. Is there one moment, one thing that spurred you on to, it sounds like that ninth grade conversation was critical. Yeah. Was there anything else that was critical on spurring you on this life path?
Man, I don't, there's no one, I think just multiple. And to me, I think it's very similar to, I remember the time I really took hold of my faith. And I was talking to a pastor of mine after this has happened, explaining it as we went back, and he was asking me kind of, when did you become saved and embrace your faith? And I was having a hard time. I was loving going to church. I love a great sermon. And I remember listening to worship, the music in worship. And I even went to a couple concerts, very contemporary music. We're not talking about hearing the Messiah or anything. Just contemporary stuff, which, remember, is how I grew up with passion music. And I caught myself crying. And I was puzzled. I couldn't figure it out, And the long story short of it, my pastor was saying, I think the Lord's trying to speak to you. Everybody thinks, the white light's going to happen and this image is going to come. It's going to be a deep voice. But no, I really look back, at thinking about what you're asking me. I really I believe that the Lord provides a path, and we can screw up that path. But I fully believe He never gives up on us. And no matter what path we take, or no matter what we do while we're on that path, He will always create the right path for us to go forward, regardless of our mistakes. And those mistakes we learn from. So, for instance, that science teacher, I was mad at him for so long. I think I almost want to say I hated that guy. But I don't think it was him. I think I really look back and say, that wasn't him speaking. I think that was God speaking. That was, saying this is the path. There's several times in my life I can think, what gave me the signal to go in that direction? When I decided to go out of the music industry, I could have moved and continued on, or take the chance of going back in education. Or the one time I had this one very famous music educator. He was in my car. He came as a clinician, and he looked at me and goes, "Why don't you have your doctorate degree?" I never even thought about getting my doctorate degree. It was really weird. And he's like, you need to. And it's not like we were longtime buddies, It's not like he's even a guy I could pick up the phone and call right now. It was just this moment in time, and that's what happened. You know, and I there's so many of those times that I look back on that I don't think it was the person. I think it was the person within, and that was my messenger. And I firmly believe that. And I think the worst things that have happened in my life were messages. And like I said, I believe that there's a path that I haven't set. And that's when you sometimes have to listen to what's going on around you and be open to those messages.
Yeah, the Lord just opens stuff up for us and has these good works for us to do. And so today, and I know this calling can fluctuate over our life's period, but today, if someone was to say, hey, Dr. Phillips, what is your call in life? You would say, my call is...
Be happy. Be happy in what you're doing, because you don't know what's going to change tomorrow. Because life is full of challenges. You can be in your dream job, and it isn't going to be perfect. You know, I think somebody else's version of a dream job, I bet they're going to be getting up sometimes not wanting to go to work. They're going to go to work and not appreciate and have to argue and maybe be considered unapproachable or whatever it may be. So, yeah, I think you got to listen to those things.
You've talked about some important people on your journey.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Who would you say has been the most influential person for you to kind of understand your calling in life? I mean, outside of the Lord, yeah.
That like I said, I can't think of one. I think of my dad, who passed away a little bit after I finished my undergrad, who was very sick after I was in 8th grade. My mom, who's alive today, you know, amazing. My brother, I mean, those guys, unbelievable. All the band directors in my life, I feel I'm a little bit of every one of them, on every side, the good and the evil. Every person, every recording I've ever listened to. And that's why I always think music is so powerful, because I could totally forget about something, but when I hear that one song, and there's thousands of those songs, I hear that one song, it immediately transfers me back to a moment in time, or a memory, or a person. Dr. Tim Lauschenheiser, who is the guy who turned to me in my car and said, well, why don't you have your doctorate? Going through my graduate degree, some of those professors who are no longer with us, like I said, I can't think of just one. There's just so many people. And like I said, I don't think it was just the people. I think there were messengers in my life. And to this day, even my wife. I mean, she's not a musician. And ironically, you know, we grew up in upstate New York, an hour and a half from each other. We were in Florida around the same time when we lived in Florida, and we met in Savannah, Georgia. So, and she's, like I said, she's not a musician. We come from two, you know, vastly different backgrounds, and I think that's amazing. You know, what she brings to my life is something I don't have, and that's a great influence in my life.
You mentioned that God has a way of sending messengers, and you said everything can kind of be a lesson in some ways. Have there been any obstacles that you've had to go over to get to where you're at today?
You know, my first job out of my doctorate, I thought was heading to my dream job. And it was probably one of the worst 2 years of my entire, I'll even put my life, because it was the wrong people, it was the wrong culture, it was the wrong identity. It's not that I lived every day in turmoil type of stuff, but nothing was clear. It was just the wrong place. And I've learned, and now I look back, because it was rough trying to, because I think at the end of those 2 years, I was ready to give up. I just finished my doctorate degree in music, and I was ready to give up the career in music, because I had such, like, if this is what it is, it wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? So that was a huge learning experience. I learned that my dream situation was not to be necessarily at the biggest school, with the biggest bank account, with the best facilities, with the best students, musicians, let's say. I learned it was a lot more than that. And having the opportunity when this position was posted, I have to say it wasn't one of those positions where I'm like, that's me. I need to be in Eastern Kentucky. I need to be, wait, where is it? Pikeville. That's just not how it happened. But again, there was something in me. There were these signals, and those signals said apply. And it was one of those things of, don't just look what you're looking for. Look at everything around you. Look at what's available, the opportunities. And so obviously I applied. And matter of fact, the first phone call I received, I remember them saying, this is University of Pikeville, and we're looking for a person to come and start a marching band and be the marching band director. And the short story of it is, I said it was, if a marching band is all you want, we can end the conversation now, because I didn't believe a program could exist from the core of a marching program. It needed to be a wind band program and an instrumental program and an educational program. And the byproducts would be things like jazz and chamber groups and marching band and pit orchestras and all these other things. And it was completely against my philosophy, the way they approached me on the phone. So, short story of that, 4 and 5 phone calls later and an interview, I'm here today. So, and again, the same thing, did I ever think I'd come to Eastern Kentucky? Was that my dream job? Was that my dream destination? I remember when I was sharing with my wife about the opportunity to come here, and some people don't know, my wife is Puerto Rican, very dark skin, and my son looks a whole lot like my wife, even darker. So very, I want to say, intimidated to come to an area that on the web and on paper looks not so diversified. Now the blessing of that is, in my job career, no matter what I do in music, it's a very diversified culture, especially working at a university. It's always going to be a diversified culture for the most part. But before I 100% took the job, I said, I need to bring my wife to Pikeville and my son. And there were a couple moments coming through a state, seeing, old cars on the side of the road and all that, which is very stereotypical, you know what I mean? It was a very quiet time in the car. But when we got here, even my son said, it's like, wow, this is not what I expected. And even my wife said, this is really nice. So again, was that them talking, or was that a messenger? And I really feel that way. I really do. Not that I believe everything comes out of my wife is, you know, love her, but.
So obviously you've had to be obedient and listen to God's voice. But if someone was watching this and they said, man, I really want to be a director of bands. I want to be in the music industry. What did you do to position yourself to get to this place?
Play. Love music for what it is. Be open to all types of music. I mean, you got to remember, I grew up on Polish music. Then I loved Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago, Huey Lewis, Tower Power, and you name it. Notice Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, you know, they're not rolling around that much. And then, you know, when, you know, as you start going up in that education, don't niche yourself. Don't pin yourself in one thing. Keep yourself open-minded. Appreciate a classical piece of music. I'll be honest with you, and I could probably offend some of my friends out there. I'm not a big fan of opera. If you offered me a free opera ticket to the most famous opera in the world with the most famous conductor, I question. But I appreciate what it is. I remember one year I had to, I taught vocal music one year. I had to kind of help step in and help out a situation. And one of the things I did was really try to get them to appreciate all types of music. So every single day I introduced a different vocalist. And it was really amazing as I was trying to convince myself to these students this was good music, I started to realize myself, I never thought of it that way. And there were a couple opera people that I just really appreciated their ability and all that type of stuff. But keep your mind open, because your career is really going to be driven and motivated in a direction of not only your successes but your failures. So again, I feel very blessed to be here, but a job that I had before this, actually not before this, after I finished my PhD, if that determined whether I was going to continue to be a band director, I probably wouldn't be a band director. So if you want to be a band director, you got to love what you do, and you got to go back to that point. This is not a job. This is something I love to do. Because if people realize the hours that I actually have, my job from the very first coming out of my undergraduate to this very day, it's not 9 to 5. Last night I got home at 8:30. When there's a football game on campus and we're doing the football games, we start 6 hours before the game starts. And after the game is done, we're back here putting things away. When we play basketball games, we start an hour and a half before the game starts. And it's funny because while we're packing up, we watch the athletes walk out. So as much as we're kind of the secondary thing maybe at a basketball game, ironically enough, we're there longer than the players. So, and just as they go to a practice, many people don't realize that UPIKE Rocks program, they were playing games, but we did 42 home games. In addition to that, we had 2 hour-and-a-half rehearsals each during the week. So, and if you want to be a band director, You got to love what you do, not because of what it is, it's because you love doing it. Because when I'm doing that, I forget about time. You know when I remember time? Is when I'm not playing, when I'm not doing, when I'm waiting. But when the horn's on my face, when I'm working, we're working, we're performing, I forget about time. I can't tell you how many times I have conducted a concert sick as a dog. Because when I get up on that podium and we start, I forget. I totally forget that I'm not feeling good. To me, that's my dream job. Whether it's here or whether it's somewhere else, but, you know, I think that's really cool.
So now, in kind of a concluding idea, you are living in the moment, performing, teaching, experiencing, creating, trying to bring back a music program, and a student comes in your office and says, I'm 20 and I have no idea what I need to do. What advice, comments would you have for them?
I would tell them you're lucky that you don't know what you want to do. Because you know who gets, the folks who get disappointed are the ones who think they know what they want to do. I had a friend who spent an entire undergrad and graduate, got his JD to be a lawyer because that's what he wanted to do. Since he was, I think he was 7th grade, that's what he wanted to do. After you finish your JD, you actually kind of do like I don't know if they don't call it an internship, but you actually do that. He did that for 2 days. He went back to school for art. That was his passion. And he spent a year to a year and a half on like a real, like dedicated in a graduate program. And he ended up working for the Solo Cup company, working on the design concepts of Solo Cups. I know it seems real simple, but I guess he loved it. And I think he's still doing it to this day, and that was back in the late 90s. So if you were coming to college, and I have prospects coming in now saying, I have no idea what I want to do. I think that's a good thing, because the college environment is the perfect environment to come into not knowing. Because one, you're just dedicating yourself to making yourself better. And two, to be involved in a program like here in music, where I'll have 30 or 40, if not 50 people when, we talk about the wind band program, where we have the dean of nursing, a math professor, a Kaiko professor, and then all the students and everything in it. What an incredible environment to come and say, we all share a common thread of passion, whether it's the trumpet, the flute, the percussion, all that type of stuff. What makes us different is finding this dream job. No one says that I have to give up my passion. But wouldn't it be cool? I'm just lucky. My passion is my job.